Howdy guys and gals, I'm Kyle Broderick, and you lucky devil you, have stumbled into the lair of the social regressive. In a recent video, we shot this long-term project rifle, which is a Savage Axis in 7mm 08. We went out to a field and we shot this thing at 1,451.3 yards, and we managed to actually make a few hits even though the wind was up around 30 miles an hour. This is one of the hits right here. This was Kedrick's. Thanks guys for coming out and shooting with me. That was a whole lot of fun. We got to do this again, hopefully on a calmer day. But the way that we were able to find the actual distance between the target and our setup where we actually had our rifles was using this little guy right here. This is an amazing rangefinder. As far as I know, it's a first in the industry. This is the Nikon Monarch 3000 Stabilized Rangefinder. So this, in addition to having a range out to that 3,000 yards that you see right there, this will do anything from 8 to 3,000 yards. This has a stabilized function. So anytime you turn this thing on and start trying to capture your ranges, it'll actually use either a gyro or accelerometer type stabilizer. I'm not sure what it uses in there. But this thing, it smooths everything out. When we were standing up on the hill pointing back toward our cars to try to figure out range, I didn't brace up against anything. I just held this with my two hands, and even in that 30-mile-an-hour wind where I was being blown around, I'm sure my hands were a little shaky just because it was pretty cold. Yeah, I was able to bounce this laser off one of the trucks that we had out there, and we got our range. Some other tests that I've been able to perform with this rangefinder include lasing a DC-10 out on a runway at about 3,200 yards. You heard me mention that the maximum effective range on this is supposed to be 3,000, but like most rangefinders, if you do get a really reflective target, a good, big flashy target like the DC-10 that I mentioned, you usually can stretch them out a little bit further. So yeah, about 3,200 yards with this thing. I've also been able to do some pretty strange things like track boats out on the water or birds in flight. That's one of the really cool things about having the stabilize function on here. You can actually track along very well with moving objects, not just smooth out your own movements, to maybe remove some of the handshake that you have, maybe some of the environmental factors, like if you're standing on a moving platform or you're trying to figure out a range and you're in a car or something like that. This actually works extremely well when it comes to tracking along with objects that they themselves are moving, like automobiles, like I say, birds in flight, things like that. One of the other benefits of the stabilizer is that you can go one-handed. So if you have a rifle or a golf club in one hand, you can just go one-handed. Everything's going to be pretty smooth. And you can even go weak hand if you want to keep that gun or whatever in your strong hand. The optics offer 6x magnification, and here's a view through it. I've got this thing just kind of held out in front of my camera. The camera's on a tripod, and you can see how shaky things can be. I'm just kind of holding this thing out there with my hand. Now I'm going to press the button and watch what happens. Everything suddenly got smooth. I can click on things once to get distance, or I can press and hold to constantly scan. So if I want to get that tree right there we go, about 93 yards. The red reticle and readout down at the bottom, that's an OLED down there, and you can change the brightness by just clicking the mode button. You can see that we can drop brightness down quite a bit for maybe some nighttime shooting, and you can crank it up if things are bright. There are two buttons on the rangefinder. The first is the power button. This is the one that you use to actually scan. As soon as you press it, it goes into stabilized mode, turns on the reticle, brings up the display. Click once again in order to get a range. Press and hold for that 8-second scan. If you just let it sit for another few seconds, it will time out on its own. If you press the mode button at this point, you'll see that we can quickly toggle between the illumination settings. So here's the lowest, and then we have 5 all the way up to the brightest. If you press and hold that mode button, you get into the various functions to change things kind of permanently within this unit. So I'm going to set this on a default of illumination level 5, or way down at the bottom. And yes, there is an automatic mode. That A that you saw will allow it to choose based on what the current ambient lighting is like. If we switch over here to the next mode by pressing the mode button, and each of the times that I'm cycling between any of these functions, I'm using the power button. So function 1 allows you to swap between meters and yards. Function 2 allows you to choose between the actual flight distance that your bullet will take or the true distance to the target. So if you are trying to figure out an exact distance to an object from exactly where you are, you leave it in this mode. But if you want to be able to get that one leg to figure out how long your bullet actually sees this trajectory, then you switch it over to angle. Function 3 allows you to prioritize which object you're going to favor in an overlapping situation. So if you want to be able to grab the distant target, there's DST, and if you want to be able to grab the foreground object, there's first. Like I mentioned, the official distances you can measure with this are between 8 and 3,000 yards, and it's going to be with a precision of 0.1 yards. And you can also switch to meters if you want to do that. One of the things that you have to keep in mind when you're using this is that, like any other rangefinder, it's going to have a certain distance limitation on different types of objects that you're going to laze. If something is, dark and flat or matte, it's not going to pick up that far out. You need to have something that's bright and possibly reflective, like say a street sign or something, in order to get those longer distances. With this, I was able to range deer out on the Red Castle gun range as the sun was starting to head into its lower quadrant. They came out on the 600-yard range to come and eat. And so I used this thing to figure out distances to them, and really I could get as far out as that range would let me, out to about 550 yards is where they were. And yeah, it worked picking them up one-handed, left-handed, whatever. Within those ranges, it was able to grab them pretty easily. You can see that the unit overall is about palm size. It's quite light. It weighs in at 6.9 ounces without the battery. And one of the nice things is that they actually included that CR2 battery in the box. They also included a neck strap and this little padded carrying case. On the back side here, you can see that we have a belt loop and a carabiner if you want to attach this to a backpack. The optical magnification on the Monarch 3000 is 6x, which I think strikes a nice balance between ranging your close targets and then still being able to see your far-off targets. If there's one recommendation that I might make to Nikon, it would be to include a twist-up eye cup or one of the folding rubber type like you get on binoculars. The eye relief on this is a little bit weird. If you're wearing glasses, you really have to push the unit into your face in order to get a full field of view. And then conversely, if you're not wearing glasses, it's just a little bit too far out for you to be able to brace this little rubber ring right here on the bones around your eye. Nikon has plenty of binoculars, and they have the technology to make a little ring for this. And maybe if it's just an aftermarket add-on, that would be pretty sweet. Every firearm and every piece of gear that I bring with me to the woods or to the range needs to have a purpose. And that's why I think this thing's going to be coming along with me on all of my excursions in the future. If I were out hunting, this would be able to take the shake out of my hands that came there from cold or exertion or from wind. If I'm out prairie dog hunting, I think that this thing should have plenty of precision, if not to be able to get a laser reading off the prairie dog's body itself out at very long range. I can at least bounce it off a rock or a cactus or a prairie dog mound. I've been testing this thing out on some pretty small objects like the birds in flight that I mentioned before. And yeah, this thing has plenty of precision. And then we have some of the fun kind of tactical challenges that we do with our rifles, like the unknown distance challenge that you might have seen me do a couple times with my friends. Well, we're going to be doing that again, this time with speed actually involved in the whole equation. We're going to take the CMMG Mark III DTR2 in 6.5 Creedmoor. That's essentially an AR-10 with a 24-inch barrel, very precise rifle, as I'm finding out in testing. But what we're going to do is we're going to take that thing and we're going to do the unknown distance challenge or something like it, where we're going to very quickly go from target to target, and instead of trying to figure out range using the scope, we're going to have somebody with this figuring out range. This is going to be very quick to bounce from target to target, and it really doesn't matter, how far out it is. This thing is going to be precise in hand. You don't have to lock it into a tripod. It's just going to be very quick to transition. I also have some plans for some moving targets, and we'll see if we can pull that one off. And then we also have long range. So I think we're going to be taking this 7mm 08 back out. We have some 6.5 Creedmoor that we can shoot out at very long ranges, and I'd like to stretch things out to a mile as we start working things up and getting better at shooting at those longer distances. And to verify range, yeah, we're going to be using this. And again, we probably won't need to lock it down on anything. So there are a lot of rangefinders out on the market right now that hover around this price tag. This is costing about $420 right now, and I think the only place that's selling it is Optics Planet. I could be wrong about that. But yeah, this is costing about $420, and there are a lot of options out there in this price range just above or a lot below. And a lot of them do have good features and good range, but you're not going to find anything else like this, period. I mean, really, this is the only stabilized rangefinder that I know of. And then especially once you couple the fact that this is a 3,000 yard and actually kind of verified, in my case, rangefinder, then yeah, there really is nothing else like it on the market. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to like, share, and most importantly, subscribe. Even if you didn't like this particular content, go ahead and subscribe. There's probably something coming that's more up your alley. Check out this playlist right here. This is going to have videos in a similar vein to what you just watched. These two videos we cherry-picked for you. And finally, the Social Regressive is on Patreon. So you can become a patron of the destructive arts and earn some goodies while helping us to provide high-quality videos just by kicking us a few bucks a month. Thanks a bunch for your patronage.